What's up guys, I'm here with the 2021 Kawasaki Z H2 and this is our first supercharged review bike. I've ridden the H2 before, great bike. This has the same engine architecture as the H2, but it definitely has a head that doesn't flow as well. There's definitely some changes, but overall it's the same architecture. And this bike makes about 200 horsepower on paper, a little over 100 foot-pounds of torque. And we're going to be flashing it and testing it before and after on everything. This bike also weighs 530 pounds, so keep that in mind. This thing is a tank. It weighs a lot compared to a lot of other leader bikes or a lot of other bikes in the same class. So again, we'll be taking this thing for a review. I'll be checking this thing stock on the dyno, and then we're taking it flashed on the dyno, and then I'll be taking out for 60 through 130 and checking it stock versus flash to see exactly what kind of gains we not only get on the dyno, because those can be manipulated, but we'll see what we can get actually on the street too with video. So I'm pretty excited. This bike only has a slip-on stock exhaust up to that slip-on, so it has a cat and everything on it, and an air filter. Has a couple tasteful mods, the Puig mirrors, the windscreens, get some air over the rider, and that's about it. Other than that, this bike is stock as a rock, so I'm super excited to get this review going, so let's get started.
What's up guys, starting a little different today. I'm starting at the gas station, which, man. So this bike I've been cruising around for a little bit and it guzzles fuel. Not when you're cruising. It gets about 30-40 miles a gallon when you're cruising. But if you're doing anything other than cruising, man, good luck. As soon as you start utilizing that supercharger, this thing really guzzles fuel. I mean, guzzles fuel. So I need to get the other side of the road here. So this bike is a tank. I mean, it's a tank of war at 530 pounds wet. Trying to avoid all the obstacles here. Oh yeah, the tire comes right up, first gear, no problem. Can't really get too crazy here in an intersection. But 530 pounds, man. I mean, you can really feel it in this bike too. It's not like my other bikes. Like, you can feel the weight of this thing. But 20,000 bucks, supercharged engine that's pretty much bulletproof. Doesn't really have a whole lot of drawbacks. I mean, yeah, it's not an H2, meaning it doesn't have that, it doesn't have a better head. I mean, the head doesn't flow as well. There's a few things about this that aren't the best, but honestly, overall, bike's pretty awesome, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're just one of these guys that wants a nice, comfy upright, needs more power, maybe you're a heavier guy or something like that, this is a perfect throw-around bike. I mean, it's pretty awesome just to cruise this thing around and hear that supercharged flutter. The flutter sounds great. You can just hear it. I don't know if you can hear it through the camera there, but it's like this flutter, like while you let off the gas and while you're just kind of cruising it sometimes, you can hear the flutter, and that's kind of the telltale sign of this. And the exhaust note's really nice. Yes, this is a stock, 100% stock system with a cat on it, but it does have a Brock slip-on, and it really gives it a nice tone. Along with that supercharger, it's a great sounding bike. Still, the #1 bike in my opinion for sounds is going to be the Aprilia. Oh yeah, tire came a little bit off the ground there in second gear, and that wasn't even giving it all the throttle. This is still stock. The throttle's a little bit jerky for me. Let's try and go another gear here. Quick shifter's kind of blah. A little bit laggy. It's kind of like almost there but not there. We'll see if we can fix that with the tuning. But yeah, the supercharger is definitely all there. Definitely feels good. Quick shifter needs some help too on that blipping. Yeah, not bad at all. For the stock power this thing makes, it's really not that bad. And we're talking like this thing has a big power fall off up top. See if we can recreate that real fast here. Oh yeah, it hits a giant wall up top. I mean, a giant wall. And I know the power, I've seen the power curves stock on these things. They just kind of, they're up here and then it just kind of goes way down here and then hits the limiter way down at the bottom. I mean, you're probably losing 80 to 100 wheel at redline. So I'll have to adjust the 60 through 130. Do I have to shift a little bit early on this bike? Because there's no way on this planet this thing will get to 130 within, I don't know, 10 seconds even, the way it's going right now. So I'll try and give it a better handicap against the aftermarket Flash, which I'll take out further. But this thing needs some help up top for sure. Other than that, this thing rides pretty well. Brakes, I really can't complain with, especially for a bike that weighs 530 pounds. Like I said, it does feel heavy, but it does feel balanced at the same time. And as long as you aren't on the throttle, this thing wasn't guzzling gas. I mean, but once you start utilizing the supercharger, you can almost watch the gauge go down. It's that crazy. But just cruising around, like I said, 30-40 miles a gallon, but you supercharger on, kiss that mileage goodbye. But when you have a bike that's this fun up top, that looks this ridiculous, I mean, upright with a supercharger, it's hard not to give it a whole bunch of throttle. I mean, I'm just laying in a 6th gear here, just kind of feeling the mid-range. That 2nd gear, let's see if we can feel 2nd gear here. Alright, 2nd gear, let's give it the beans. Okay. There's not a whole lot there, guys. For a supercharged bike, it's not impressive. In the mid-range, it's a whole lot of power. And it's thing for making about 100 foot-pounds of torque stock. That makes sense. It's a whole lot of power in the mid-range, but up top it really falls on its face. You expect it to keep pulling because this has a centrifugal supercharger. Centrifugal superchargers work different than a PD style. Oh cool, look at the jet, man. That's cool. We get this all the time here in San Diego. It's awesome. We get to see all the military stuff. These guys are always cool. But a centrifugal supercharger basically makes power with RPM, so it's kind of weird to feel it fall on its face up top. Whereas like a PD style or root style blower would be more just massive power on the hit. It's just a flat curve basically. This thing's supposed to make power with RPM though, and you can feel that's a throttle limitation for sure on this bike that we're going to remove on the dyno. Low cruising stuff, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as, let's say, the ZX10. Let's put it in 1st gear. And I can manage the throttle pretty well, honestly. Yeah, it definitely has plenty of power in 1st gear, 2nd gear. Mid-range is not a joke. This bike is not a joke. Up top is where it starts getting a little bit laughable for a bike like this. And honestly, for a price point of 20,000 bucks, this is a cool bike. It's super comfy. It's almost laughable when you ride it because it's like, what kind of power is this thing making? Oh, there it goes. Front wheel in the ground. So if I lean back a little bit, the front tire comes right off on this thing. And I think for the setup on the chassis, the power is perfect for the setup on the chassis. But up top, people like me or people that buy this bike because it has a supercharger and you want to feel a supercharger, I think there's something more to be gained, especially on a dyno. I think we'll gain plenty of power with this bike, a lot of power with the unlock, like unspeakable power. Why don't we just get this thing over to the 60 through 130 spot? Let's see what she does. Let's see how let's see how we can improve it later, of course, but let's see what she does now, because I have a feeling this bike is going to be a little bit slow, and like I said, I'll babysit it a little bit short of the red line, so it's not completely falling on its face, where it's laughable. When I feel it really slow down, I'll shift. And we'll probably see that in the power curve where it goes like a hill climb almost. All right, I'm here for the stock 60 through 130. Let's see what she does, and let's see what we can improve upon. Let's go. Here we go. And that was a 5.4 second 60 through 130. Pretty impressive for a bike that weighs this much, that is that restricted. Now again, I did shift early at that 12,000 mark. I didn't ring it all the way out where you see the power draw completely off. I think that'd be kind of too unfair of a fight between flashed and not flashed, honestly. So I'm giving the handicap over to the stock flash, making sure that I'm not trying to ring it out all the way to redline. Like, nobody would do that. You feel the power drop off big time like that, and then as soon as you shift, there's a burst of power if I did it like that. It's almost dangerous because there's so much power hits you right when you shift. And the shifter's not that great in the first place, where it's super fast. It's kind of slow and sluggish, but room for improvement there. So let's kind of go over the final results here before we go to this dyno and unlock this bike and get this thing where it's happy. I definitely like it's a balanced bike for 20,000 bucks. for what it is very cool. Mid-range is amazing, a little jerky down low, quick shifter needs Jesus, and the top end is horrendous. Like it's laughable how much power this thing loses up top when the mid-range is so happy. I mean, it's such a happy bike in the mid-range, and it just loses everything up top. So I think taking this thing over the dyno, unlocking it, getting it de-restricted, pulling off all these limiters, and fixing a few of the issues that I'm seeing on the bike will really kind of wrap this thing up in a nice tidy package where I think they could raise the price of this thing $5,000 more if they sold it like the way we're going to tune it right now, honestly. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's see the results first before I start talking. So I'll see you guys after the dyno here.
I'm here at our dealer in San Diego, Lee's Cycle, and we've got the 2021 ZH2 strapped down on the dyno. So we're going to do our stock, stage 1, and stage 2. So let's see what she has to offer here. All right, that's a wrap for the ZH2. Let's see what she made. I'm kind of baffled by the numbers here, guys. I mean, honestly. So stock we have in blue here, 180 wheel horsepower stock. Stage 1, 221 wheel horsepower. You can see right there in the green. Stage 2, that's in red, that is 240 wheel horsepower, guys. That is literally 60 wheel horsepower over stock, and that's just peak RPM that I could find the best we possibly could. It carries well beyond that. You can see the RPM that we extend there. So with stage 1 and stage 2, we have stage 1 here, and stage 1 obviously doesn't carry the RPM as far. The timing isn't as aggressive, neither is the fueling. This was a request from the community saying that we wanted ultra conservative, and I think the reason for that was because the ZH2 kind of got a bad rap when it first came out with reckless tuners, just throwing some Woolwich maps in there and melting the bikes down. And really just the top of the piston melts in these bikes. They don't bend rods, they don't break rods. I mean, they're pretty stout. As long as you keep that oil level perfect on the bike, these bikes are amazing, man. So right here, we're looking at 221 right there for stage 1. And then this is max reliable. That's what we consider it, max reliable on stage 2 with that 240 wheel horsepower. But honestly, stage 1, are you really gonna use 221 wheel horsepower on this bike? Probably not. There's gonna be a few people that are gonna use stage 2 with a 240, but man, that is absolutely ridiculous. You can see right here at 7,500 RPM, it really starts separating out, and you can start seeing it start carrying over the other mapping. And I mean, as far as the differences between the H2 and the ZH2, we got a different cylinder head. There's small differences here, and there's no intercooler on this thing. So it's a great bike, don't get me wrong. The engine is stout. I mean, this is stout. As long as you keep that oil level perfect on the bike, like I mentioned before, it's very vital that you keep it in between the two lines on this bike. Too much, it starts back feeding into the intake. Too little, of course, we all know what happens if you put too little oil in there. So amazing gains again, guys, and I can't wait to take this thing out and see how it's improved on the road. Not only just power-wise, but how it feels with the how linear it is. The throttle control, everything. We're gonna see what kind of gains this makes. The quick shifter, I'm gonna test it all, guys, so let's get to it right now. I'm excited.
All right, guys, first ride here. Ooh, oh, oh, that shifter's so much faster than stock. It feels even more exact than the ZX10, the Gen 6. Wow, this is impressive, guys. Oh, and the speed. Okay, so it's so much smoother. I'm not really noticing mid-range, low-range improvements. Feels pretty much the same as stock right now, but the smoothness, it's so much smoother. It's not bucking me around anymore. Oh man, the bike just has so much power up top now. Oh, I missed the light. So let's kind of go over what we did in the dyno here while waiting at the light. I hate being at lights, stuck at lights. So we've got that 180 again, the 220 and the 240. That is stock, stage 1 and stage 2. No other changes were made to this motorcycle. And like I said before, this engine is a tank. I mean, it's good. And we were talking about really reckless tuners just going over and above on this bike, but it is honestly, it is bulletproof, this motor, unless you are really just shooting for the moon on this thing and just trying to really just up everything beyond where it needs to be. Way too much timing, and then it starts melting the piston, or way too much IETs. So I wouldn't hold this thing on the freeway at like 6th gear, 200 plus miles an hour. I mean, that's where these things really start hurting themselves. Even stock, you can't just do it forever on these bikes. And we have stage 1, which is ultra conservative but still tuned, and it's making, you know, we're talking 220 from 180, and that power starts separating about 7,000 RPM. And I mean, we're talking that's a 40 wheel horsepower gain with a bigger RPM limit, and it's still safe for the engine. We're talking still safe for the engine. Stage 2 is maximum safe for the engine, meaning we're still making an impressive amount of power, but it's still conservative. We're not pushing it all the way to the limit, not even close. We can still add more timing, we still add more RPM to this thing. That's what people normally do, and that's when they start chucking all kinds of parts from this bike. So we like to keep it really nice and safe for our customers, but still, from stage 2 from stock, that's 60 wheel horsepower up top. That is a ridiculous amount of power, and we're, oh, this quick shifter is so nice. And then we're making about 10 wheel torque over stock. And that puts us over 100 wheel torque on this bike, which is impressive. That almost puts us up where we're talking, you know, the KTM Super Duke was stock, which very impressive bike. I mean, as far as torque goes, that thing is a monster. Makes 105 from an NA 2-cylinder. Impressive. So let's start talking about this power now. Let's see what we can do here. We'll lay into it a little bit here. Let's see what we've got. 3rd gear pull. Oh my god. It's impressive. It's very impressive. This is a lot. Oh my god. Okay. Let's not do that so much. The tire's so light. I have to lay on the front of this thing. Let's see here. Get rid of that head shake, huh? There we go. We're just gonna have to distribute the weight a little better. If you lean back on an upright, there's no weight in the front of it. It's gonna start wandering. So one thing I gotta do is really kind of lay onto the front of the bike, put more weight distribution at the front, and they'll get rid of that head shake there, even though I still think we should have more of a steer damper, a stiffer steer damper, especially with all this power it's laying down up top. It is atrocious how much power it's laying down now. It really feels impressive, and again, there's no trickery here. This wasn't done on some one-off tune. This is an off-the-shelf tune with proper fueling. We showed it in the dyno. This is a great map right off the bat. I mean, we tweaked the fuel a little bit, made like 4 more wheel horsepower. That was it. So that's how spot on this thing was right off the shelf. And I mean, really, if we're talking guys that don't care about the top end power of this, I can understand that. But we're honestly talking about the smoothness of not only the rideability down low, in the mid-range it's just vastly improved. It doesn't jerk me anymore. It's so smooth on the throttle, but also when I want the power, it's right there. It's awesome. And the quick shifter, let's see here. There we go, quick shifter down. I mean, that is, it cracks right into gear. There's no, look at my hand right here. No crazy upset and balance. So I'm very impressed with the improvements from the dyno on this bike right now. I mean, not just from the dyno tuning itself, but just seeing those numbers is pretty crazy, especially over stock. With stock, this bike laid over so much up top. Now it just wants to keep going and going and going. It really makes use of that supercharger. And again, this is all 91 pump gas. I'm not trying to trick you guys with MR12 or we sprinkled a little bit of E85 in. This is just 91, and we know 91 in California is about the worst gas you're going to get in the United States. I mean, it's clean, but it doesn't have a whole lot of octane connected to it. But right now we're heading over to the 60 through 130. We're gonna see what this bike does. Improvements over that stock 60 through 130 with nothing more changed than just the tuning. Again, 91 pump gas, everything's exactly the same. We're just gonna redo this with just the tuning on it. Let's see what she does. All right, I'm here with the Kawasaki Z H2, ready to do our 60 through 130 test. Construction guy here said he's gonna stop the traffic for me. This works out perfect. Let's get it, guys. Construction guy gave me a bunch of space. This is cracking me up. Oh, this shifter is wild, guys. Listen to that. That's awesome. All right, let's get this thing in position here. Second gear start, like we always do. We'll see if how much we'll see how much of this bike I can actually handle. Here we go. Wow! This bike is brutal. It is brutal fast. Wow. My God, this should not be legal on an upright. That is ridiculous. I was fighting this thing the entire time. I only finally laid into it really in the top of third. I finally was able to give it all the throttle. And you guys saw it, that was a 4.8 second 60 through 130 versus that 5.4. It's over a half a second difference we're getting from 60 to 130. And like I said, I could have made that stock one a lot worse if I would have just rang this thing out to redline, but I tried to race it like most people would. When they feel the power really die off in the bike, shift to the next gear. So I just kept it at 12,000. If I rang it out, that difference would have been 5 seconds probably, to be honest with you guys. So I made sure I didn't just try to sandbag everything. That's why we're dealing with only over a half second difference, which is still awesome. And even if I could have, I only did one run with this bike, 60 through 130. If I could have done something better, like 10 runs or something like that, I really could have gotten this bike planted better. More seat time equals a faster time. But I'm very happy with the results of what we got there, and I think it kind of impresses upon people what we can do with this motorcycle on the top end, which it makes it just a thrill to ride. The throttle control's better. I have better throttle on, throttle off stuff. It's not as jerky. The quick shifter is amazing now, completely amazing. And some of the other features I didn't really go over with you guys. For example, I know with tuning, a lot of people deal with cruise control issues on their bike. So why don't we just do a cruise control run here? I haven't even tried it yet, so let's go here. Boom, and let's set. 70 miles an hour, right? And there's nothing here, guys. My hands are off. You can see it's set right there. And I can even, let me see if I will push it up. There we go, 73, 74, 75. See, I can just keep on going up with it, guys. No magic. This is just the flash right here. Let me turn that off. So we can do cruise control through all modes. There's no problems with cruise control. We can also do power dependent mapping, meaning we can make the F map for stage 2 91 pump, and I can make the M map for medium for MR12, for example. That's a stage 2 only feature. That is something that people really like about the mapping. It's something we got requested from our customers. And for you guys that don't care about just the outright power of the motorcycle, like I said, the rideability is overall improved of the motorcycle. It's a lot more smooth. The quick shifter is a lot better. It's not as jerky when throttle on transitions with a supercharger kicking in or fueling kicking in. Overall, this bike is just a lot better when it comes to everything as far as features go. And the power, oh my God, the power, guys. It's insane. That's insane amounts of power right there, insane. Man, this bike is such a blast to ride now. Such a blast. Just second gear roll-ins now, the power doesn't just fall on its face. It just keeps going. I said, they get rid of the head shake, distribute the weight better. See, no more head shake when you get weight more on the front of the bike. But man, what a great bike. In stock, it didn't have that head shake problem in stock. It's when you start throwing 60 wheel horsepower more than stock at it, that's where it starts to get that head shake on there, when you just kind of lay back on the seat. I mean, let's do the final recap here. I'd say everything about this bike has been improved. For a $20,000 bike, this is insane. I mean, I'm not too fond of the looks for it. I know some people are. Maybe some people don't like the looks, they just like the way the bike rides, but having a supercharged bike that makes 240 wheel horsepower for 20,000 bucks, this thing is a sleeper. You can go up to a lot of leader class bikes today. Like, if you came up to a new Kawasaki ZX10, this bike would rinse a ZX10 if it was on stock mapping. It would fly around it and do circles. This bike is awesome for what it is. And it's so comfy to ride. I mean, the sitting position, I can do this for hours. The rear set position, everything about it is super nice and comfy. I have no gripes about this bike at all. I think it just needs the flash and you're all set. And like I said, cruise control is still working. We still got everything working perfectly. It's just more refined now. Everything is more refined now. So I think that's going to do it for this bike. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next one.